I don't want to put some smile in my mind. I don't want no free. You wanted to give me some free that was way smaller than this. I don't want no free.
What started as one rapper swapping out his jeweler in Houston, Texas became one of the most talked about call-outs the hip-hop world had seen in years that led to a raid of one of the most successful Houston jewelers. There's a lot of drama brewing here, so let's get right into it. From a flea market in Houston to the top of the hip-hop world. Bro, what if the plug you've been rocking with your whole career, the guy who put the ice in your mouth, the drip on your neck, the diamonds on your wrist every single time you walked out the door looking like a bag, what if that man was not actually giving you what you paid for? Like, what if the jeweler you've been locked in with for 20 years, the dude whose name you put in your music, whose store you pulled up to before every major move in your career, what if that man had genuinely been running game on you the whole time? That is the question that went absolutely nuclear across the entire Houston hip-hop scene in the spring of 2026. And the one who sparked it all was one of H-Town's realest, a man who had literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building what he thought was a day one, unbreakable loyalty with his jeweler. This is a beef 20 years in the making. This is a story about loyalty and how it gets violated. About diamonds, real ones, lab-grown ones, and the jaw-dropping difference in price between the two. About what happens when the trust holding a 20-year plug relationship together finally snaps on camera in front of the whole internet. But before any of that hits the way it's supposed to hit, before the call-outs, before the fraud claims, before the receipts and the live videos and the whole world picking sides, you need to understand exactly who these men are and exactly what they built together. Because without knowing the foundation, you cannot fully feel how hard the collapse landed. So let's run it back to the beginning. And the beginning starts at a flea market in Houston, Texas, circa 1996. Born Dang Antoine in 1973, in what was then Vietnam. The man who would one day be crowned the undisputed king of bling did not come up in luxury. Not even close. He came up in a small rural village with no electricity, in a country still bleeding from decades of war, in circumstances that offered almost zero pathway to the life he eventually built. But what that village did give him was a gift money can't buy: generational knowledge. Because Johnny Dang's grandfather and father were both jewelers, and from young, Johnny was learning the craft the old way, by hand, through repetition, father to son, grandfather to grandson, the real lineage. That craft ended up being the only plug he needed. His father, a Vietnam War veteran, emigrated to the United States in 1987. 9 years later, in 1996, a 23-year-old Johnny Dang left Vietnam, crossed the water, and linked back up with his family in Houston, Texas. He touched down in one of the most culturally loaded cities in America, with no connects, no clientele, no storefront, no rep. Nothing but the craft his family passed down to him, and he started where almost every great American story starts, at the bottom, all the way at the bottom, working with his brother repairing jewelry at a local Houston flea market, bringing in around $100 a month, $100 a month. Hold that number, fam. Lock it in. Because we're coming back to it when we get to what this man eventually built. 2 years of grinding the flea market. 2 years of putting in work every single day, building his rep one repair at a time. And by 1998, Dang stepped up and opened his first retail store, TV Jewelry, named after his Vietnamese name Tuan, inside Houston's Sharpstown Mall. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the Galleria. It was a mall location. But it was his bag, his foundation. And inside that mall, in those early grind years, Johnny Dang stumbled into a lane that nobody else was working quite the way he was working it. Custom diamond grills. For anybody who might be slipping on the culture, diamond grills are custom jeweled mouthpieces worn over the teeth. A flex that had been floating around hip-hop for a minute, but that Dang was approaching on a different level. His designs required zero painful tooth filing. They were innovative, intricate, dripping in craftsmanship. And when Houston rapper Paul Wall slid through Dang's spot and got a custom diamond grill made, Wall was so locked in by what he saw and felt on his teeth that by 2002, the two linked up officially in a business partnership, a craftsman and a co-signer. A jeweler and a rapper with connections. That partnership was the cheat code. Through Paul Wall, Johnny Dang got direct access to the whole hip-hop ecosystem. And once that door cracked open, it never closed again. Because in the culture, nothing moves a jeweler like a real cosign from someone the streets respect. Word spread. The clientele came through. And the names that started sliding up to Johnny Dang's spot read like the entire VIP section of hip-hop's biggest night. Kanye West, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Lil Wayne, Cardi B, Travis Scott, Gucci Mane, Migos, Rick Ross, Nicki Minaj. Every one of those clients wasn't just a transaction. Each one was a walking advertisement. Every music video, every red carpet, every IG post showing a dang piece was free marketing no label budget could compete with. His pieces started popping up in iconic records and videos: Nelly's Grills, Beyonce's No Angel, Soulja Boy, and Gucci Mane's Gucci Bandana. And then in 2023, an entire track came out literally titled Johnny Dang, that Mexican OT featuring Paul Wall. A full song named after the man. A whole tribute record. You don't get songs named after you unless you are genuinely embedded in the culture. Like, that's not a coincidence. That's a legacy. Dang kept himself ahead of the competition through constant innovation, cooking up techniques like invisible baguettes, being first to pioneer emerald-cut grills, forever pushing the ceiling of what custom jewelry could be in the hip-hop space. He kept a VIP grills wall with tooth molds from celebrity clients, making sure the personal touch never got lost no matter how big the operation grew. And the operation grew astronomical. By 2016, Dang had opened a 16,000 square foot flagship store on Richmond Avenue near Houston's Galleria. Over 72 employees, 3 retail locations, full in-house manufacturing, custom pieces ranging from $1,000 to 200 grand and beyond. What would eventually be reported as a $200 million empire, built from scratch, from $100 a month, from a flea market bench, by a man who stepped off a plane from Vietnam with nothing but craftsmanship in his hands. That's the real American dream story. And Houston claimed it as its own. One of the people who had been watching that story build from close range, who had been putting real bread into it for 2 decades, was a Houston rapper named Sauce Walka. Sauce Walka, government name Philip Wayne. Doesn't need a long intro if you know Houston. He's one of the city's most prominent figures out of the streets and into rap, a dude who came up the real way and never let the culture forget where he was from. And from the early days of his come up, before the notoriety and the features and the rep he built in H-Town's streets, one of the first places Sauce was investing his money was Johnny Dang's shop. The business relationship between them stretched back roughly 20 years, 2 decades of custom orders, handshakes, and Sauce being one of Dang's most loyal and highest spending Houston clients. Not a tourist, not a one-time buyer, a day one who held it down. Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of that relationship. Custom grills, chains, pendants, bracelets. There's a publicized $500,000 Cuban chain in this history, $500,000 for a single chain. A purchase so large it apparently required a bank transaction just to process. And on top of that, a $300,000 diamond ring purchased separately after an incident in Memphis. Bro was not playing around when it came to spending. He was about that life. This was not some surface level customer relationship. This was a brotherhood between 2 men building their legacies in the same city at the same time. Sauce put his money where his loyalty was, consistently for 20 years. And if the streets had a hall of fame for loyal clients, Sauce Walka would have been in the first ballot. But somewhere in those 20 years, or at least according to Sauce, somewhere deep in all that loyalty and trust and bread spent, something had been off, something had been foul. And the one who finally helped expose it was not a private investigator or a journalist. It was a jeweler, a former Dang employee who walked out of the shop in 2021 carrying knowledge about what was really going on inside those walls. His name was Plug Geo, and the moment he came into Sauce Walka's orbit, everything changed. The public call-out that broke the internet. Before we get to the explosion, the live sessions, the fraud allegations, the whole internet losing their minds, you gotta understand who Plug Geo actually is. Real name Jose Jomata, known in the streets as Plug Geo or Geo. This man was not just some random former employee. He was reportedly one of the craftsmen who was generating serious revenue inside Dang's operation before things went left. According to the reporting, Geo dipped out in April of 2021, reportedly over pay disputes, the kind of exit where you leave the shop, but you don't leave the knowledge. After bouncing, Geo set up his own high-end permanent grill operation, and Sauce Walka eventually found out what Geo was capable of. The size of the stones, the quality of the settings, the transparency of the transaction. And allegedly, when Sauce started comparing what Geo was delivering to what he had been receiving from Johnny Dang over the previous 2 decades, things started not adding up. The tension between Sauce and Dang actually predates 2026. There was already a grill-related incident back in 2024 that started the static between them. The smoke had been building quietly, but in late August 2024, it came out in the open in a way nobody in H-Town's jewelry scene was ready for. Picture the scene. Sauce Walka is unveiling what he's calling the world's first permanent $1 million grill. 28 teeth, over 50 carats of premium stones, 3-carat and 1-carat diamonds in rose gold settings on every single tooth. A piece so ridiculous in its scope and so wild in its claimed value that the reveal alone was guaranteed to go viral. This was a flex for the history books, a statement that everything that had come before it was simply no longer the standard. The piece was made by Gio, the same man who used to work for Dang. Now, in the culture, switching jewelers happens. That's just business. Artists level up, tastes change, new talent emerges, people move on. But Sauce Walka did not make this switch quietly. He did not slide to a new craftsman on the low without making noise. He announced it on site, out loud, with Johnny Dang's name right in the center of the moment. And the way he did it made perfectly clear. This was not just a business move. This was a shot. I'm going to take out Johnny Dang's, put in the Geos. 6 words. And they hit different. And then came the line everybody started quoting. We went from $100,000 to $1 million. He was setting a bar, he said, a standard in the state of Texas so high it cannot be touched. But under the flex, underneath all the spectacle of the $1 million reveal, Sauce was already dropping hints about something way deeper. Because a few moments later, he explained exactly why he wasn't interested in the freebie Dang had reportedly extended to keep his business. What Sauce was communicating, without saying it flat out yet, is that after 20 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in bread spent, he wasn't looking for charity. He was looking for what he had always been paying for. And he had finally found someone who could actually deliver it. The grill switch by itself would have been a story, the public naming, the upgrading from Dang framing, putting it on blast for the whole internet to see. That alone would have generated weeks of debate in the culture. But what flipped this from regular hip-hop gossip into a full-blown industry-shaking scandal was what came next. Not in the reveal clip, but in the viral Instagram live sessions that detonated in mid-March 2026. The allegation dropped, and it was heavy. Johnny Dang had allegedly been selling lab-grown CVD diamonds, chemical vapor deposition diamonds, as authentic, natural VVS-grade stones, charging customers full, natural diamond prices. Not as a one-time slip-up, not as a quality control hiccup, but as a deliberate, long-running operation across his entire client base. Rappers, celebrities, the whole roster of people who trusted him with their biggest jewelry purchases. Now, if you're not deep in the diamond world, here's the breakdown. Lab-grown CVD diamonds are chemically identical to natural mined diamonds. On site, and in a lot of cases even with trained eyes and basic equipment, they look exactly the same. You cannot eyeball the difference, which is exactly what makes the alleged scam so cold and so financially brutal. The come up on this kind of plug is massive. A 2-carat CVD stone runs roughly $3,000 to $5,000 to produce. A 2-carat natural diamond of comparable grade, $20,000 or more. That $15,000 gap, multiplied across pieces being sold for $50, $100, sometimes well over $100,000 a pop, adds up to an almost incomprehensible bag being extracted from clients who never once questioned what they were actually holding. Sauce was calling this straight up fraud, not a misunderstanding, not a clerical error, but a calculated decision to finesse loyal customers who paid full price on pure trust for years. And on top of that, he put a specific grievance on the table. Dang was allegedly showing love to out-of-town celebrities and big-name artists, plugging them with free or heavily discounted promo pieces for social media clout, while Houston's day ones like Sauce, who had been pulling up and paying full ticket for 2 decades, were allegedly getting the lab-grown product at natural diamond prices. H-Town loyalty getting played in H-Town. That's a different kind of disrespect. Gio, the former employee who had allegedly been putting up major numbers inside Dang's operation before the pay dispute pushed him out, was said to have helped put Sauce onto the patterns. And Sauce hinted that he had receipts, blurry photos of what he claimed were certificates showing a mismatch between what was on the paperwork and what was actually in the pieces. And here's something that doesn't get enough attention in this story. This wasn't even the first time Sauce had fired shots like this. Back in 2020, he had gone on record calling out another major jeweler, Elianta, for the exact same CVD pass-off move, which means this wasn't some emotional reaction, wasn't clout chasing, wasn't a dude who just woke up salty. This was a man who had been watching this specific pattern in the jewelry game for years and had finally decided to put the whole industry on blast. You'd expect a man facing claims that could fold a $200 million brand to come out with the counterpunch fully loaded. Documents, independent tests, a point-by-point breakdown of why every specific allegation is false. Evidence that walks back every claim Sauce made on live. That's not quite what happened. Dang's primary public response wasn't focused on the fraud allegations themselves. It was aimed at the disrespect of being publicly aired out by a man he had worked with for 20 years. He spoke about always supporting Houston families, the community, everything he built from the bottom up. He told Sauce, and the whole internet watching, you can shop around the world. He talked about never handing Sauce a single free piece, about grinding since the day he stepped off the boat. It was a proud man standing on business, but it was not a denial of the specific fraud claims made against him. In broader responses to the fake diamond accusations and the diamond tester videos that started flooding the timeline, Dang did acknowledge that lab-grown and natural diamonds can look virtually identical to the eye. He went to TikTok with his own testing content to show transparency, claimed his high-end pieces are natural diamonds, and that he actually charges his clients less than competitors, and framed Gio's accusations, which had been floating since 2021, as the noise of a disgruntled ex-worker, but a direct, evidence-backed denial matched specifically to each fraud allegation that never came through publicly. And when the internet smells silence on the substance of an allegation, it fills that void fast. The accusations went absolutely viral in March 2026. YouTube reaction channels ate for weeks. TikTok, creators broke it down from every angle. X and Twitter had threads running thousands of posts deep. Facebook groups turned into courtrooms, and everybody had a take. Nobody was just watching quietly. One camp called Sauce Salty, a rapper with hurt feelings about switching jewelers, using fraud allegations as cover to save face after publicly clocking out of a 20-year relationship. The clout-chasing accusation got thrown around heavy, but the other side, the people who had been paying attention to the jewelry game for years, were coming in with a completely different energy. Johnny been finessing for decades. The debate hit every angle. Lab diamonds ain't fake, but lying about it is, versus defenses of lab-grown as a completely valid option if the buyer knows what they're getting. And that's where the real conversation lives. This was never about whether lab-grown diamonds are real. They're real stones, chemically speaking, beautiful ones. Everybody knows that. What this debate is about, what it has always been about, is what you were told when you paid for it, what the receipt said, what the jeweler looked you in the eyes and promised. If you pay for the real thing and got handed something else, that ain't a lab-grown diamond problem. That's a fraud problem. The fallout. Before we go deeper, let's be real about where things actually stand right now. As of March 24, 2026, no lawsuits have been filed, no police reports have been made, and no official legal action of any kind has been taken publicly. No independent lab has publicly verified or tested the specific pieces being talked about. What we have is a public call-out, driven by one man's first-hand account backed by a former employee's word against another man's denial. We're not in a courtroom, we're in the court of public opinion. But in 2026, the court of public opinion is not something you just walk out of. And if these allegations ever got proven, the consequences for Johnny Dang and Co. would hit from multiple directions at the same time, like a combo nobody sees coming. Let's walk through exactly what that fallout could look like. Start with the most obvious, the brand taking an L celebrity clients who dropped hundreds of thousands, even millions, on custom grills, chains, and pieces. People at the level of Lil Wayne, Travis Scott, Beyonce are not going to play it cool, knowing that what they put in their music videos, what they flexed on their pages, what they wore as part of their whole image and identity might not have been what they paid for. The trust getting destroyed alone could tank the high-profile cosigns and social media visibility that has powered Johnny Dang's brand since the beginning. And without that celebrity ecosystem, the engine dies. And the bag exposure runs deeper than just losing future clients. The resale market for existing Dang pieces could crater if those diamonds get retested and come back lab-grown, devaluing the jewelry held by artists and collectors who are treating those pieces as actual assets, things that hold their value, things you can liquidate when you need to. Rappers who bought $100,000 chains as investments would be sitting on stones worth a fraction of the receipt. Multiply that across years and clients against a reported $200 million operation, and the numbers stop being theoretical real fast. Now let's get into the legal side of things, because if this story ever crosses from social media drama into an actual courtroom, Johnny Dang and Co. would be looking at 3 serious legal lanes opening up at the same time. The federal lane. If the accusations hold up under independent testing, the company could face direct enforcement action from the Federal Trade Commission for violating its jewelry guides. The FTC is not playing games on this topic. Lab-grown diamonds must be clearly and conspicuously disclosed as such. Full stop. No gray area, no wiggle room, no close enough. The FTC has already sent warning letters to jewelers who failed to properly distinguish lab-grown from natural in their marketing and sales, and the agency can levy civil penalties, publicize violations, and seek injunctions that could fundamentally restrict operations. Texas clients could file lawsuits under the Deceptive Trade Practices Act, the DTPA, for false, misleading, or deceptive acts in commerce. Misrepresenting the origin and market value of diamonds is isn't just a moral violation under Texas law. It can get you hit with actual damages, attorney fees, and, if the conduct is proven knowing and intentional, up to triple damages. Triple, on pieces that move for 50, 100, 200,000 per transaction. You do that math and tell me how that ends well. Individual or class action suits from affected clients could pile on claims of common law fraud, negligent misrepresentation, breach of express warranty, and unjust enrichment. And the track record in hip-hop jewelry scandals does not have good outcomes for the jeweler who gets caught. Past situations in the rap space have ended in massive financial settlements and full business collapses. Cautionary tales that are now referenced every time a story like this breaks. The criminal lane is where things could get genuinely ugly, and this lane only opens under specific conditions. If evidence ever surfaced that GIA certifications or other documents had been falsified to label lab-grown stones as natural, that could escalate to criminal charges under Texas Penal Code, Section 3242 for deceptive business practices, or even federal wire and mail fraud statutes if interstate commerce or electronic communications were involved. That's not a fine and continue situation. That is the kind of legal exposure that ends businesses, ends careers, and ends everything a man spent his whole life constructing. Proven fraud could also bring the Texas Attorney General's office through the door with additional fines, restitution orders, and potential requirements for mandatory independent lab testing and origin disclosures on every future sale. Forced transparency measures that would completely restructure how the custom jewelry business operates. Here's the thing that really needs to land though. Because this story is not just about Johnny Dang and Sauce Walka. This is not just a Houston beef. What Sauce was actually pointing at, underneath all the bravado, underneath the $1 million grill switch, and the whole scorched earth energy, was something systemic. Something the hip-hop jewelry industry has been built on and quietly profiting from for decades. In the culture, rappers and celebrities who spend genuinely enormous sums on jewelry almost universally trust their jeweler's word, without ever pulling up to the transaction with independent GIA certification. That's how the game has always worked. You got your guy. You've been locked in with him for 10, 15, 20 years. You don't ask him to prove the diamonds are real. That would be seen as an insult, a violation of the code, a signal that the trust isn't there. And if Sauce Walka's allegations are accurate, that code of trust, that unquestioned ride or die loyalty, is exactly what was allegedly being played. The margin on this move is staggering once you see it clearly. $3,000 to $5,000 for a lab-grown 2-carat stone versus $20,000 or more for a natural stone of the same grade. If you can pass off lab-grown as natural, charge natural prices, and collect that spread on every single transaction, every chain, every grill, every pendant, across an entire client base of people who never question the authenticity because they trust you completely, the bag being generated on the back end would be incomprehensible. And the only thing that could ever interrupt that arrangement is one client getting curious enough to switch jewelers and start asking questions. That client ended up being Sauce Walka. This whole situation, regardless of how it ends legally, could trigger industry-wide demands for mandatory GIA certifications and full transparency on every custom jewelry transaction. New high-net-worth clients could become hesitant about commissioning expensive custom pieces, shifting their patronage toward jewelers who can provide certified, independently verified documentation for everything they sell. That's a seismic shift for a whole industry built on vibes, relationships, and taking the jeweler's word as bond. The 72-plus person operation at Johnny Dang & Co. could also feel the pressure from the inside. When fraud allegations taint the internal culture of a shop, talent doesn't stay. Craftsmen, setters, grill technicians, the real artisans who make the product worth buying, will take their skills somewhere that isn't carrying a scandal. And a shop without its craftsmen is just a building. Now here's where the story takes a turn that might catch you off guard. But if you know Houston, you understand it immediately. According to reports, Sauce Walka and Johnny Dang eventually squashed the beef in person at a Houston community event. No lawyers, no press conferences, no formal legal escalation. Sauce later referred to Dang as a GOAT in follow-up commentary. No apparent animosity left in the air. Two men who had moved together in the same city for 20 years, working it out the way the city works things out, face to face, hood to hood, without making it a spectacle. And on one level, that says something real about both of them, about Houston's culture of solving problems in the community instead of in the courts. That's genuinely something. But, and this is a very important but, the squash doesn't erase the conversation that already happened. The viral videos exist, the TikTok breakdowns exist, the reaction channels exist, the Twitter threads are archived. When you say something to the internet keeps it forever. No handshake, no hug, no GOAT caption can delete what was said on that live. The court of public opinion doesn't dismiss a case just because two people decided to move on. And the core question, the one at the center of all of this, remains unresolved in any official, independently verified way. No lab has publicly tested the specific pieces. No certification records have been produced. No third-party audit of Dang's operation has been released. The claims rest entirely on Sauce Walka's and Gio's first-hand accounts against Dang's denials. The story is still being written. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.